The wind howls relentlessly, cutting through the once bustling village, now silenced by the weight of time and suffering. Thick, gray clouds hang heavy in the sky, their shadows stretching long across the land. The scent of damp earth and decaying wood mixes with the faint, acrid tang of smoke from distant hearths. It is the dead of winter. A small figure, cloaked in rags and bundled in the last remnants of warmth the village can offer, walks hesitantly along the path that leads toward the crumbling stone walls of her home. Each step crunches in the snow beneath her boots, a soft, muted sound in the vast emptiness. The child is no more than 8 years old, but the world she inhabits carries the burden of one who has lived far longer than her years suggest. She pauses for a moment, eyes scanning the horizon. The skeletal remains of trees, twisted and gnarled from years of exposure to the harsh elements, stretched like dark fingers toward the heavens. The vastness of the landscape feels both oppressive and infinite, as if the earth itself is closing in around her. The village, once teeming with life and laughter, now lies dormant. The fields beyond are barren, the soil exhausted, unable to produce the crops that once sustained her people. Famine has gripped the land with a vice-like grip, its shadow stretching over every house, every hearth, every heart. She thinks of her mother. Her face, soft and kind, lingers in the child's memory like a fading dream. The woman's warmth, once a constant comfort, is now gone, taken by the plague that swept through their village the previous autumn. Her mother's death was swift, a merciless thief in the night. No one had seen it coming, least of all the child, who had still clung to hope that sickness would pass, that her mother would rise from bed, as she always had before, her hands busy with the work of life. But this time, death came too quickly. The child had watched as her mother's body grew cold, watched as the light in her eyes slowly dimmed, leaving behind nothing but an empty shell. The village priest had come, muttering prayers in Latin, the strange, foreign words falling like dust in the wind. But they had meant nothing. Death, in the Middle Ages, was a constant companion, one that came without warning, without reason, and often without mercy. It took the old, the young, the strong, the weak. There was no rhyme or reason to it, only the cold certainty that, for most, life would be brief and frail. Her father, a man of few words, had buried her mother with little ceremony. It was a task he seemed to have performed mechanically, as though he were merely carrying out an obligation, not the grieving act of a husband burying his wife. The child had stood silently by, her heart heavy with a sorrow too large for her tiny frame. What else could she do but watch? She was too young to understand the true depth of loss, yet the hollow ache in her chest told her all she needed to know. This was the way of the world. With her mother gone, the child had no one to turn to but her father. But even he, once a figure of strength and reliability, seemed to have shriveled with the weight of loss. His back hunched further each day, his steps more labored. His face, once flushed with the healthy glow of a hard-working man, had turned pale and drawn. He no longer spoke of the future, of dreams or plans. He simply worked, endlessly. His hands were rough with calluses, his fingers stiff from the cold. There was no room for warmth or joy in the days that followed. There was only survival. And for the child, that meant learning how to carry on, how to live in a world that had suddenly become all too real, all too cold. Now, as she stands before the stone house, she feels the weight of the world on her small shoulders. There is no warmth inside. The fire has long since died out, the hearth cold and empty. Her father is somewhere in the fields, working, though she doesn't know what he's harvesting, for nothing grows in the frozen earth. She knows, though, that it will be hours before he returns, and that she will once again be alone. She doesn't mind it as much anymore. Being alone has become something she is used to, something she can now bear. It's the quiet that unsettles her the most, the deep, gnawing silence that fills the space around her, that fills the space in her chest. The village, once alive with the sounds of chatter, of children playing in the streets, now echoes only with the wind's mournful song. The houses, their roofs sagging from years of neglect, stand like hollowed-out carcasses, abandoned remnants of a time long gone. The few villagers who remain are gaunt, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes hollow with hunger and fear. They speak in whispers, as though afraid that speaking too loudly might summon the wrath of fate. As the child enters a small cottage, she immediately moves toward the hearth. Her hands, stiff and trembling, begin to clear the ashes, the ghostly remnants of fires long dead. She knows there is no kindling left, nowhere to feed the flames, but she does it anyway. It is a ritual of sorts, an empty gesture that makes her feel as though she is still a part of something, as though she has some small control over the world around her. The faint glow of the dying light from the window casts long shadows on the floor, and the cold creeps into her bones, settling like an old, familiar friend. In the corner of the room lies a bundle of rags, a small basket of bread that had been left out for the rats. But the child's hunger is stronger than any superstition. She grabs a small piece, tearing it apart with hands that have known hunger for as long as they have known work. She chews it slowly, the dry, stale bread scraping against the roof of her mouth. It's not enough to stave off the gnawing emptiness inside, but it will have to do. Outside, the wind picks up again, the howling more intense now, as if the earth itself is crying out in pain. The child closes her eyes for a moment, imagining the sound as a voice that is speaking to her, telling her that this too shall pass, that the world will turn again and spring will come. But she knows better. Spring is a distant memory, a time long gone. It's not coming back, at least not for her. She can feel it in the air, the heaviness of it, the stillness that fills the village, the sense that life has come to an end. The plague has already taken so many, and with it, the last vestiges of hope. But she cannot dwell on such thoughts for long. She has learned that survival, in this world, requires action. It requires moving forward, no matter how small the steps, no matter how fleeting the moments of peace. So, she rises, dusting off the crumbs of bread from her lap, and moves toward the small wooden door. She knows that she must fetch water from the well, though the thought of braving the cold again fills her with dread. But there is no other choice. There is no one else to do it. The village well, like the rest of the village, has become a place of silence. The old woman who once sat by it, gossiping with the passers-by, is gone, taken by the fever that had swept through last summer. The well now stands as a silent monument to a life that once thrived, a life that is now but a distant memory. The child approaches it with a mixture of fear and necessity, her breath forming little clouds in the frozen air. She pauses at the edge, the cold radiating from the stone walls, and drops the bucket into the darkness below. As she waits for the bucket to fill, she looks around once more. There is no one, only the wind, and in that moment, she feels a sense of connection to the earth beneath her feet, to the soil that once bore life. She can hear the faint chirping of birds in the distance, a sound that fills her with a quiet sadness. It is the sound of life, but it is not the sound of her life. Not anymore. The bucket rises slowly, the icy water shimmering in the pale light. The child pulls it up, the effort causing her small arms to strain, her fingers numb with the cold. She fills her canteen and, with one last glance at the empty village, begins her trek back to the house. She is learning in this harsh world that survival is more than just a matter of food and water. It is about memory. It is about remembering those who have passed, who have gone before her. And as she crosses the threshold of her home, she whispers a prayer to the wind, a prayer for her mother, for the village, for herself. It is not a prayer for salvation, but a prayer for peace. And as the fireless hearth casts long shadows across the cold stone floor, she sits down by the window, waiting for a world that no longer exists. The clang of swords against shields echoes to the dimly lit hall, reverberating off the cold stone walls like the last remnants of an ancient and inevitable battle. Sweat drips from the brow of Sir Alistair, his armor stained with blood, both his own and that of his fallen comrades. His breath is ragged, a thin mist rising from his lips, his heart pounding in his chest as he surveys the carnage before him. The once proud banners of his lord hang limp, tattered from the weight of war, the colors faded and stained by the passage of years. The air is thick with the scent of iron and sweat, a heavy reminder of the cost of loyalty in a world where honor is often paid in blood. Outside the hall, the wind howls through the narrow streets of the castle town, its mournful wail a fitting soundtrack to the gloom that has settled over the kingdom. The battle, though won, has left its mark. Many of his comrades are dead, and the fields are now strewn with the bodies of men who fought for a cause that no longer seems just. Sir Alistair knows, deep down, that war has become something far removed from the ideals it once espoused. The glory of battle is gone, replaced by the grim reality of survival in a world where kings and lords rarely honor the lives of their subjects. As he stands in the great hall, blood-streaked and weary, his mind drifts back to the days of his youth, to a time when he believed in the righteousness of the knight's code, when the clang of steel against steel was the sound of a noble fight. He had been just a boy then, eager to prove himself, hungry for the respect and admiration that came with the title of knight. But now, at the threshold of middle age, he realizes how naive he had been. The years have taken their toll on him. His body no longer moves with the same speed or precision it once did. His face is lined with the scars of both battle and time, and his spirit feels heavier with each passing day. War has become an endless cycle of violence, a cruel joke played on the men who give their lives for causes that rarely come to fruition. The knight's thoughts are interrupted by the soft creak of the heavy wooden door behind him. A familiar figure steps into the hall, his face drawn and somber. Lord Reginald, his commander, surveys the room with a quiet, calculating gaze, his hands clasped behind his back. "You did well, Sir Alistair," he says, his voice low but steady. "The battle is won, but the war is far from over." Sir Alistair nods, his heart sinking. "How many did we lose, my lord?" Lord Reginald hesitates for a moment, as if calculating the weight of the answer. "Too many," he finally says. "Too many to count. And many of those who remain will not live to see the next moonrise." The word strikes Sir Alistair with the force of a hammer blow. He had fought in countless battles before, but none had ever felt like this. None had left such a bitter taste in his mouth. He had long known that the life of a knight was a precarious one, that war was a game of survival, and that the odds were rarely in one's favor. But even so, this feels different. It feels as though the very fabric of the world is unraveling, that the life he had once chosen is slipping away from him, leaving nothing but the cold weight of duty. He remembers the first battle he fought, back when he was just a young man, eager and full of hope. He had been trembling in his armor, terrified of the unknown, but his comrades had rallied around him, offering encouragement and praise. They had fought together, side by side, with a sense of purpose and unity that seemed to transcend the violence and bloodshed. That battle had been brutal, of course, but there had been a sense of pride in it, a sense that they were fighting for something noble, something worth protecting. But now, looking around the hall at the faces of surviving knights, his comrades, he wonders if they will ever know that same sense of purpose again. The war has changed them. It has made them hard, cynical, and filled with a despair that is hard to shake. Sir Alistair can see it in their eyes, the hollow look of men who have lost something they cannot name, something they cannot reclaim. He has seen it in himself, too. He thinks of the men he has lost over the years, the faces of comrades who were once as close as brothers, their names now lost to the wind. He remembers the young squire, barely a boy, who had fought beside him in the last great siege. The boy had looked up to him with such admiration, such eagerness to prove himself, and Sir Alistair had tried to protect him, to shield him from the horrors of battle. But there had been no way to keep him safe. The boy had fallen, a mere boy, cut down by an enemy blade as he tried to defend his lord. The memory of that face, of those wide, frightened eyes, haunts him still. And it is not just the soldiers who fall on the battlefield. Sir Alistair has seen it in the faces of the villagers, too. The plague has ravaged the land, claiming more lives than the sword ever could. The markets are empty, the taverns quiet, and the once bustling streets are eerily silent. He thinks of the women and children, left behind when their husbands and fathers went to war, only to be taken by disease, famine, or the cruelty of a world that seems determined to strip them of everything they hold dear. Survival, he realizes, is not simply a matter of strength or skill. It is a matter of luck, a matter of fate. He has seen knights, strong and skilled, fall in battle, while peasants weak and frail survive the ravages of plague and famine. The randomness of death is perhaps the cruelest of all things in the Middle Ages. There is no rhyme or reason to it. It comes for you when you least expect it, and it takes you with no warning, no mercy. The Lord's voice breaks through his thoughts again. "Sir Alistair, I need your counsel," Lord Reginald says, his tone now more urgent. "The kingdom is in disarray. The nobles are at odds, the peasants are restless, and there is no end in sight to the war. What should we do? Sir Alistair turns to face his lord, his mind momentarily clear. He knows the answer, though it weighs heavily on him. There is no answer, my lord. The kingdom is fractured. The old ways are crumbling. Perhaps it is time for us to question everything we have fought for. Lord Reginald looks at him sharply, his brow furrowing. Question everything? Yes, Sir Alistair says, his voice tinged with a bitterness that surprises even him. What is the purpose of all this? To fight for a king who does not care for his people? To serve a lord whose only interest is his own power? We have given our lives, our youth, our blood, and for what? For what, my lord? The words hang in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Lord Reginald does not reply immediately. He simply looks at Sir Alistair with a kind of knowing sadness in his eyes, as though he, too, understands the truth of the matter, but is too bound by his duty to acknowledge it. For Sir Alistair, the truth has become a silent weight, one he can no longer carry without breaking. He knows that the knight's life is no longer one of glory, no longer one of noble cause. It is a life of survival, a life of endless war, a life where tomorrow is never guaranteed. The sound of bells tolling in the distance breaks the silence between them. It is a somber sound, a reminder that another day has passed, another battle won. But it is a hollow victory, for the cost is always too great. Sir Alistair steps away from the hall's cold stone walls, his heavy boots echoing on the floor as he makes his way toward the door. He feels the weight of his armor, the weight of his years, and the weight of his choices pressing down on him with each step. As he exits into the bleak twilight, he is met by the cold, biting air, the wind cutting through the open courtyard like a blade. And for the first time in a long while, Sir Alistair feels a deep, aching weariness that goes beyond his body. It is the weariness of a man who has lived too long in a world where death comes for everyone, whether they are ready for it or not. In the distance, the shadows of the castle walls stretch long, the fading light casting everything in an eerie, almost spectral glow. The knight takes a deep breath, his lungs filling with the chill of the evening air. He knows that tomorrow will come, and with it, another battle, another fight. But for now, as he stands in the fading light, he allows himself one fleeting moment of peace, one moment to remember the world he had hoped for, before it was shattered by the harsh realities of the Middle Ages. And as the bells toll, he knows that he, like so many others, has survived, but only just. The abbey stone walls are thick with the weight of time, their surface worn smooth by centuries of rain, sun, and wind. The scent of incense hangs in the air, heavy and cloying, mixing with the musty odor of ancient parchment and candle wax. The flickering light of a dozen candles casts long shadows against the walls, illuminating the sacred texts that line the shelves, their delicate pages stained with the passage of countless years. The quiet hum of prayer fills the air, a low, reverent murmur that seems to come from every corner of the abbey, from the monks in their hoods to the nuns who move silently between the rows of altars. It is a place that feels both timeless and utterly removed from the world outside. In the center of the abbey's main chapel kneels Brother Elric, his back straight, his hands clasped together in silent devotion. He is young, barely 16, but his eyes are old with the weight of loss. The cool stone floor presses against his knees, and he feels the sharp sting of the cold seeping through his threadbare habit. His bones ache, his stomach growls with hunger, but he does not allow himself to shift. He has learned the art of suffering, how to endure it without complaint, how to carry it quietly in his chest like a secret. The abbey, though peaceful and serene, is not a sanctuary from the harshness of the world outside. It is a place of refuge, yes, but it is also a place of penitence. For Brother Elric, the decision to join the monastic life was both an act of faith and an escape. He had been just a boy when the plague swept through his village, killing his parents and siblings in a matter of weeks. He had watched them waste away, their bodies racked with fever and cough, their once lively voices reduced to weak, breathless whispers. The sickness had taken everything from him, his home, his family, and the future he had once imagined for himself. When the plague finally claimed them all, Brother Elric had been left alone, a solitary figure in a world that seemed suddenly much darker, much colder. In his grief, he had wandered for days, seeking some kind of solace in the places that had once been familiar to him. but there was no peace to be found. Everywhere he turned, there was death, death in the streets, in the fields, in the markets. It was the same in every village, every town. The world had become a place of suffering, a place where the innocent were not spared, and where life was as fragile as a thin thread. The sight of his family's graves, the soil freshly turned, had been the final blow. It was then that he had decided to leave, to abandon the world that had taken everything from him, to find peace, or at least an end to his sorrow, in the walls of the abbey. And so he had come here, to this ancient stone fortress of faith, where silence was the only solace, and prayer was the only answer. Here, he had given himself up to God, offering his pain, his grief, and his fear in exchange for the promise of salvation. But even within the walls of the abbey, even surrounded by the chant of the monks and the flickering light of the candles, Brother Elric cannot escape the darkness that lingers in his heart. The past has followed him here, like a shadow, and it casts its long, inescapable presence over his every thought. It is not just the death of his family that haunts him, but the knowledge that death is all around him, that death is as constant as the rising and setting of the sun, that it is not just a fear, but reality, one that waits for all of them, whether they are ready or not. The abbey's bell tolls, a deep, resonant sound that shakes the very bones of the building. It signals the hour of prayer, the time when the monks will rise from their places of contemplation and gather in the chapel to sing the sacred hymns. Brother Elric rises slowly from his kneeling position, his stiff joints protesting as he moves. He crosses a cold floor, his bare feet brushing against the stone as he approaches the altar. The flickering candles seem to grow brighter in the dim light of the chapel, their flames dancing like tiny, fragile beacons in the darkness. As he stands before the altar, his hands pressed together in prayer, his mind wanders once more. He thinks of the life he left behind, the life of a simple farmer's son, of fields and crops, of the warmth of his mother's voice and the laughter of his siblings. He remembers the smell of fresh bread, the taste of apples picked from the tree, the soft rustling of the wheat in the fields. Those memories, so full of life and joy, seem like a distant dream now. How long has it been since he felt the warmth of the sun on his face, the freedom of running through the fields with no care in the world? How long since he had heard the sound of his mother's lullabies, since he had laughed with his brother in the evenings? The life he now leads is far from those memories. It is a life of silence and deprivation, of endless hours spent in prayer and meditation, with no room for joy, no room for the pleasures of the world. The abbey is a place of austerity, a place where the monks sacrifice their earthly desires in hopes of earning a place in God's kingdom. There are no feasts here, no festivals, no laughter. There is only prayer, and silence, and suffering. Brother Elric does not mind the silence. He has come to embrace it. But there are times, late at night when the abbey is quiet and still, when his thoughts become too loud, when the memories of his past become too heavy to bear. He can hear the sounds of the plague in his mind, the coughs, the cries of his family as they gasp for breath, the rustle of their bodies as they slipped away from him, one by one. He can feel the weight of his mother's cold hand, her once soft skin now stiff and lifeless. The image of her face, pale and empty, is burned into his memory, a scar he cannot erase. In the stillness of the abbey, his mind races, the guilt and sorrow rising within him like a wave. Was it his fault? Had he done enough to save them? Had he prayed enough? The questions swirl around him, unbidden, relentless. But there are no answers, only the cold certainty that he could not have saved them, that no one could have. He turns his eyes to the altar, his gaze resting on the statue of the Virgin Mary, her face serene and peaceful in the flickering candlelight. Her image offers him little comfort, for he has long since questioned the power of the divine. How could a merciful God allow such suffering to exist in the world? How could a God who promised salvation allow his mother and siblings to die in such agony? And yet, even as he asks the question, a part of him knows the answer. The answer is that suffering is a part of life, a harsh, unforgiving reality that cannot be escaped. And so, he has come to the abbey not to escape death, but to face it, to accept it. The bell tolls again, and Brother Elric bows his head in silent prayer. He is no longer praying for salvation, nor for the lives of those he has lost. He is not even praying for forgiveness. Instead, He is praying for strength to endure, for the strength to live in a world where death is ever present, where it can take anyone at any moment, without warning or mercy. And as he kneels before the altar, the cold stone beneath him, the faint scent of incense in the air, he feels something stir deep inside him, a faint, flickering hope. It is not a hope for a better world, for he knows that such a world may never come. But it is a hope that life, in all its cruelty and hardship, is still worth living, that despite the pain, despite the suffering, there is still something sacred in the act of survival, and that, perhaps, is all that anyone can ask for. As the prayer ends, Brother Elric stands slowly, his body aching from the long hours of devotion. He looks around the chapel, the silence pressing in on him from all sides, and for a moment he feels a strange sense of peace. It is not the peace he once sought, not the peace of a world untouched by death. It is a peace born of acceptance, a peace that comes from understanding that survival, in the Middle Ages, is not a triumph over death, but a quiet surrender to it, a surrender that allows one to continue, despite everything, to endure the suffering and hardship that life inevitably brings. With that thought, Brother Elric turns and walks slowly back toward the cells, the weight of the past still heavy in his chest, but now tempered by the quiet strength of acceptance. Tomorrow, there will be more prayers, more silence, more work. But for now, he allows himself the smallest measure of peace, a peace that perhaps is all anyone can hope for in a world that seems determined to take everything away. The chill of winter bites at her skin as Alira steps cautiously through the knee-deep snow, her breath visible in the frigid air. Each step is a struggle, her feet sinking into the frozen earth, her body trembling against the cold that seems to seep into her very bones. She pulls her woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders, the coarse fabric doing little to ward off the biting wind that cuts through the stillness of the village. The sun, weak and pale, hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows across the barren fields. It is a world that feels frozen, dead, where even the earth itself seems reluctant to give life. Alira pauses for a moment, glancing around at the village she once knew so well. The smoke from hearths curls upward, twisting the cold air like the ghosts of a lost time. The houses are small, humble cottages with thatched roofs, their walls leaning inward from the weight of years of neglect. The once bustling marketplace, where merchants would hawk their wares and children would chase each other between stalls, now lies eerily quiet. The few villagers who remain go about their work with their heads down, their faces drawn, their eyes haunted with the weight of an unseen sorrow. She thinks of her mother, whose face has slowly faded from her memory, like an old photograph left out in the sun too long. Her mother's laughter, once a constant source of comfort, is now a distant echo in Alira's mind. She can remember her hands, warm and callous from years of working the loom, her voice soft and soothing as she hummed lullabies in the evening. But those memories are slipping away, fading with the seasons, like the warmth of summer in the face of never-ending winter. Alira's mother had died last year, taken by the sickness that had ravaged their village, a silent, invisible enemy that crept into homes unbidden and struck down the most vulnerable. The sickness had come without warning, and its effects were swift. First, a fever, then a cough, then death. It had taken Alira's mother within a matter of weeks, a tragic end to a life spent in service to others. Alira had watched as the life drained from her mother's eyes, as her once vibrant form had withered away in the feverish grip of the plague. She had prayed for a miracle, prayed to every saint she knew, but none had answered. Her mother was gone, and Alira was left to face a world that had become impossibly harsh, impossibly cold. The cold is nothing new to her. Alira has spent her entire life in this village, working alongside her mother and father in the fields, tending to the animals, weaving the cloth that they would sell to the few villagers who still had money to buy it. She had never known a world beyond this small corner of the kingdom. There had been no grand adventures, no journeys to distant lands, only the endless cycle of work and survival. The seasons had come and gone, bringing their harvests, their winters, and their plagues. Life had always been fragile, always on the edge of death. But even then, there had been hope. There had been family. There had been warmth. Now, there is nothing but cold and silence. She is alone. Her father, who had once been a strong, steadfast presence in her life, is no longer the man he used to be. The death of her mother has hollowed him out, leaving him a shadow of his former self. He spends most of his days locked away in their small cottage, his eyes dull, his shoulders hunched beneath the weight of grief. Elira no longer knows how to reach him. She no longer knows how to bridge the chasm of loss that has swallowed him whole. And so, she finds herself alone in this barren landscape, trudging through the snow to the barn, where the animals need feeding, where the daily chores must continue. Even though there is no one left to enjoy the fruits of the labor, she moves with a kind of mechanical precision, as if the work is the only thing that keeps her tethered to reality. She does not think of the future, for there is no future to imagine. There is only the present and the work that must be done to survive it. As Elira enters the barn, the warmth of the animals offers little comfort. The cows are huddled together in the corner, their breath visible in the cold air, their eyes dull with the same resignation that she feels deep in her chest. The chickens cluck softly, their feathers ruffled against the chill. She moves to the trough, scooping grain for the birds, her hands stiff from the cold. It is the same routine every day, a routine that once felt like a connection to her family, to the life she had known. Now it feels like an endless cycle of survival, a cycle that has no end, no purpose. She cannot remember the last time she laughed. She cannot remember the last time she felt warmth in her chest that was not born necessity. Her body is tired, but her soul is more tired. She feels the weight of grief pressing on her chest like an iron cage. And no matter how much work she does, no matter how many animals she feeds, it does not lift. It only grows heavier, suffocating her, making it hard to breathe. The wind outside picks up, howling through cracks in the barn's walls, and Elira pulls her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She is used to the cold, but there are days when it seems to cut through her like a knife, when the world feels so harsh and unforgiving that it is almost impossible to remember a time when it was not this way. The nights are the worst. In the darkness, with only the flicker of the hearth to light her way, Elira's mind turns inward, and the weight of loneliness settles over her like a blanket. She misses her mother's voice. She misses the quiet moments spent by the fire, talking about small things, about the day's work, about nothing at all. She misses the warmth of family. But it is not just the absence of her mother that weighs on her. It is the absence of hope. She sees in the faces of the few villagers who remain, those who are still too young to leave but too old to fight. There are no young children in the village anymore. The plague has taken them all. And the few who survive, like Elira, carry the weight of that loss every day, their hearts heavy with memories of what once was and the hollow reality of what is. She has seen in her father's eyes this dull, empty look that tells her he no longer believes in the future. There is no point in continuing, no point in fighting to survive when everything that makes life worth living has already been taken away. She knows, deep down, that he has given up. He no longer tries to hide it. He has no will to live. And in his silence, Elira has learned the painful truth that survival in this world is not just a matter of working the land or tending to the animals. It is a matter of will. It is about holding on to something, anything, that can keep you going, even when the world around you is crumbling. As she finishes her chores and steps out of the barn, Elira pauses for a moment, looking out over the fields, which are as barren as the rest of the village. The earth, once full of promise, now lies dormant beneath a thick blanket of snow. There is no life here, no growth. It is as though the land itself has been drained of all its vitality, just as she feels drained of hers. She wonders if the earth, too, feels the weight of death pressing upon it. Does the soil remember what it was like to be full of life? Does it long for the warmth of spring, for the touch of the sun on its skin? Or has it, too, forgotten what it was like to be alive? In the distance, she hears the faint sound of bells tolling. Another death, another life lost. She wonders who it is this time. Who is left to die in a world that has already lost so much? The wind picks up again, biting at her skin, and Elira huddles into her shawl, making her way back to the cottage. There is no one left to talk to, no one left to share the silence with. She knows her father will be there, slumped in front of the fire, eyes vacant, lost in his own thoughts. She knows the night will be long, filled with the weight of grief and loss. And in the morning, She will rise again, and the cycle will continue, feeding the animals, tending the fields, doing what must be done to survive, even when survival itself feels like a punishment. She walks back to the cottage, her footsteps crunching in the snow, and as she passes the empty homes of the village, she can't help but wonder if there is anything left to live for. The thought lingers in her mind, heavy and oppressive. If survival is nothing more than an endless cycle of work, of emptiness, of loss, then what is the point? But she knows the answer, even if she doesn't want to admit it. The point is that she is still here. And as long as she is here, she will fight to survive. Not for herself, not for the life she once had, but for the memory of those who are gone, for her mother, for her father, for the village that once thrived, for the earth that once bore life. In the end, survival is not just about living. It is about remembering. And Alira will remember for as long as she can. The smoke from 1,000 hearts rises into the gray sky, twisting in the wind like faint, disappearing ghosts. The village of Rivenholt seems to be suspended between worlds, one foot in the warmth of life, the other teetering on the precipice of death. It is a place where every breath is a battle against the elements, where every sunrise might be the last. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and wood smoke, and the distant sound of blacksmith's hammer ringing out from the forge offers a stark contrast to the stillness of the early morning. It is a world that feels both alive and at the same time utterly fleeting. Rivenholt is a village built from the earth itself. Rough-hewn houses made of stone and timber, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of years of neglect. The people who live here are tough, their lives shaped by a harsh and unforgiving land, by the ebb and flow of seasons that seem to pass with little regard for the hopes and dreams of the villagers who call this place home. Among them is Eamon, a young man with the callous hands of a farmer, the furrowed brow of someone who has spent too many days in the fields beneath a sun that does not show mercy, and the deep-set eyes of someone who has known hardship from the moment he was born. At 22, he is already much older than his years would suggest. The weight of his responsibilities, the farm, the livestock, his younger sisters, has shaped him into someone who looks at the world with a kind of wariness, as though expecting betrayal from every corner. Eamon's life, like so many others in the village, has been defined by work, sacrifice, and survival. The land is barren this time of year. The fields a dull brown beneath a gray sky. The trees stripped of their leaves by the harsh winds that have been blowing in from a mountain for weeks. The harvest had been poor, and the winter that followed had been even worse. It had brought with a hunger that gnawed at the villagers' bellies, a gnawing emptiness that seemed to seep into their bones. Eamon's family, like most, had survived on what little they could grow, on what scraps they could scavenge from the forests and the rivers. There was never enough. Not enough food, not enough warmth, not enough hope. The crops had failed last year, and Eamon's father, once a proud and strong man, had wasted away with the disease that followed in the wake of famine. There had been no physicians in Rivenholt. Only the healer, old Margaret, whose remedies were mostly herbs and prayers. But even she had been powerless against the grip of death. The sickness had come quickly, and with it, the knowledge that there would be no help, no miracle to save them. It had taken Eamon's father, leaving him to shoulder the burden of the farm and his family's survival. As he trudges through the snow towards the fields, Eamon can't help but think of his father, of the man who had once stood tall and strong, a pillar of his family and his community. Now, Eamon is left with only memories of laughter and hard work, of days spent tending the animals and mending fences, of a time when life felt like it might actually be something worth living. That was before the famine, before the illness, before the land had grown so unforgiving. He reaches the barn and pauses, taking a moment to rest against the doorframe. The barn is quiet, save for the low, mournful sound of the cows shuffling within, their breaths steaming in the cold air. The fire is low, the light of the hearth flickering weakly, and Eamon can feel the sting of the winter wind as it cuts through the cracks in the walls. The air inside the barn is thick with the smell of hay and the animals' warmth, but it does little to soothe the unease in his chest. He enters the barn and moves toward the animals, his thoughts drifting as they often do these days. It is not just a land that is dying. He realizes it is the village. The people who once lived here with pride, who laughed in the face of hardship, are gone. The young men have gone off to war, leaving behind only widows and children. The children who remain grow sick with every passing winter, their faces pale and their limbs thin. There is no hope for the future. There's only survival, and even that feels uncertain. Eamon is always known for fragility of life, has always been aware of how quickly it can slip away. It is a lesson taught by the land itself, a harsh teacher that shows no mercy. The village's grim existence has been a constant reminder of that truth. He has watched people around him grow old before their time, watched them bend beneath the weight of work, of hunger, of disease. He has watched them die, one by one, until it feels as though there is no one left who remembers the world as it once was. He moves to the trough, feeding the animals in silence, the steady rhythm of his actions offering some small comfort. The work is mechanical, something to focus on, something to push the thoughts of the outside world away. His fingers are stiff from the cold, but he hardly notices. He is used to the cold now, used to the pain, used to the emptiness that seems to hang over everything. As he works, he hears a familiar sound of footsteps approaching, the crunch of boots against the snow. It is his sister, Mare, no more than 18, her face pale but determined. Her presence is a small, fragile thing in this harsh world, but to Eamon, it is a lifeline. Mare has been his constant companion ever since their mother died when they were children, and after their father's death, it was Mare who kept him going, even when he didn't want to. She steps into the barn, her breath coming out in visible puffs of mist, and gives him a small, tired smile. "How are the animals?" she asks, her voice soft but steady. "They're fine," Eamon replies, his voice rough. "Same as always." Mare looks around the barn, the dim light casting shadows on her face. "I know it's hard, Eamon," she says after a moment, her voice hesitant. "But we can't keep going on like this. We need to leave. There's nothing here anymore. Not for us." Eamon turns to face her, his heart sinking. He has heard her say this before, heard the desperation in her voice, but every time he has refused to listen. "Where will we go, Mare?" "There's no place left to go. We're stuck here, just like everyone else. We survive or we die." She steps closer to him, her expression pleading. "But we can't survive like this, Eamon. It's not just the crops failing or the cold. It's everything. The sickness, the war, the land itself. None of it will let us live. I don't want to die here. I don't want us to die here." Eamon's chest tightens as he looks at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He has always known what she said is true, but admitting it aloud feels like a betrayal. To leave would mean abandoning everything. Everything his father had worked for, everything they had fought to hold on to. But Mare is right. There is no future here. There is only the slow, inevitable decline of a village that is dying, just as the land is dying, just as they are all dying. The silence hangs between them for a long moment, the only sound the soft rustle of the animals shifting in their stalls. Finally, Eamon exhales, his breath ragged. "We leave when the spring comes. But we can't leave now. We're not ready. Not yet." Mare nods, her eyes filled with sadness and resignation, but she does not argue. She knows as well as he does that survival means waiting, waiting for the right moment, waiting for something, anything, that might bring hope back into their lives. But that hope feels as distant as the horizon, as unreachable as the sun in the sky. As Eamon looks around the barn at the animals, at the land beyond, he realizes that he is already living in the ruins of a world that no longer exists. The village is dying, the land is dying, and he is not sure how much longer he can fight to hold on. But he will fight, for as long as he can, for Mare and for the memory of their father. Because survival, no matter how hard it may be, is the only thing left to hold on to. As the wind howls through cracks in the barn and the snow falls silently outside, Eamon knows that tomorrow will come, and they will continue to fight. They will continue to survive. And when the time comes, they will leave this place, if only to find a place where the light of hope might flicker, if only for a moment. But for now, they endure, and that, in this world, is enough. The wind howls through the forest like a creature trapped in a cage, its breath cold and biting as it sweeps across the thick canopy of trees. The sky above is a dull, oppressive gray, a blanket of clouds that seem to press down on the earth, suffocating it. The ground is soft and treacherous beneath his boots, the mud clinging to soles, threatening to slow his every step. But Cedric, a woodsman by trade, has learned to move through this wild place with practiced ease, his body attuned to the rhythms of the forest. He has spent his life here, hunting, gathering, surviving. The forest is both his home and his enemy. It is a place of both sustenance and danger. The trees, tall and ancient, seem to close in around him, their gnarled branches reaching down like the fingers of forgotten gods, their roots twisted and hidden beneath the earth, ready to trip the unwary traveler. The birds, ravens, crows, and sparrows, flit between the branches, their harsh calls echoing to the stillness of the woods. The sound of a twig snapping underfoot startles him, and he pauses, every muscle in his body tensing as he scans the area around him. The forest is alive with unseen things, predators, creatures that lurk in the shadows, creatures that will kill without hesitation, without mercy. But Cedric is not afraid. He knows this land better than he knows himself. He has learned the signs, the sounds, the smells of the forest. He knows where to find the game, where the streams run clear, where the herbs grow thick in the underbrush. He has lived off the land, survived on it, for as long as he can remember. But survival, in this world, is never guaranteed. Not here, not in the medieval wilds, where life is fleeting and death is always close at hand. Cedric knows that better than anyone. He pauses again, crouching low to the ground, his sharp eyes scanning the forest floor. His fingers brush against the damp earth as he searches a familiar trail. Paw prints, broken twigs, the subtle shift in the undergrowth that signals a passing animal. His quarry today is a deer, slender and fast, with antlers that could fetch a decent price in the village. But the hunt is never easy, especially in these harsh winters. The animals are thin and weary, their movements sluggish, their senses sharpened by hunger and fear. As Cedric moves deeper into the woods, the shadows grow longer, the air colder. His breath comes out in visible puffs, and he pulls his cloak tighter around his shoulders, feeling the chill seep into his bones. The hunger gnaws at him, but he ignores it, focusing only on the task at hand. He needs to find food. He needs to bring something back to the village, something to sustain them through the coming months. The village of Stormhold lies on the edge of the forest, a small settlement of farmers, hunters, and traders who scratch out a living in a world that offers them little. It is a place of hard labor, of constant struggle against the elements. The winters are long and brutal, the summers brief and full of toil. The villagers survive on the crops they grow, the animals they raise, and the game they hunt in the forest. But it is never enough. The land is unforgiving, the seasons unpredictable. And now, with a plague that has begun to creep its way through the kingdom, even the most basic survival feels like a victory. Cedric's mind drifts back to the night his mother died not from disease, but from hunger. She had wasted away slowly, her body shrinking, her eyes growing dull as the lack of food drained the life from her. The village had suffered a crop failure that year, and there had been little to harvest. They had lived off meager rations, and when the winter came, there had been nothing left to eat. His father had died when Cedric was just a boy, leaving him and his mother to fend for themselves. She had taught him how to hunt, how to gather, how to live off the land. But no matter how hard they worked, it was never enough. The memory of her death still haunts him. The way her body had grown frail, her hands trembling as she reached out to him for comfort, the rasp of her breath in the stillness of their small cottage. He had held her hand until it went cold, had whispered to her that it would be okay, even though he knew it wasn't. There had been no help, no healer to save her. She had simply withered away in front of him, as though the life had been sucked from her by some invisible force. Cedric shakes the memory away, focusing once more on the present. He cannot afford to dwell on the past. Not now. Not when there is work to be done. Not when the world around him is slowly dying. He continues deeper into the woods, moving quietly through the underbrush. The trees are silent, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. He can hear the soft rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant crack of a branch snapping under the weight of something large. He freezes, his heart pounding in his chest. The sound has come from ahead. A rustling sound, a deer, a doe, perhaps. He crouches lower, his movements slow, deliberate. His bow is ready, his arrow nocked, his eyes focus on the distant shadow moving between the trees. The hunt is always a game of patience, a game of waiting for the right moment. He moves closer, inching toward the creature, every step calculated, every breath measured. He can almost hear the soft pounding of the deer's hooves against the forest floor, feel its presence just ahead. Then, in a flash, it appears, stepping into the clearing. The deer is beautiful, its coat sleek and gray, its antlers just beginning to show signs of growth. Cedric steadies his breath, pulls the string of his bow tight, and releases. The arrow flies through the air, striking the deer with deadly accuracy. It stumbles, its legs giving way beneath it as it falls to the ground with a soft thud. Cedric moves quickly, approaching the fallen creature with practiced steps. He kneels beside it, his hands steady as he prepares to finish the kill. The deer is still alive, its eyes wide, its breath coming in shallow gasps. For a moment, Cedric meets its gaze, and something shifts within him. A flicker of sorrow, of recognition. He raises his knife, but before he can strike, he pauses. The creature is not unlike him. It, too, struggles to survive in a world that is harsh, a world that offers no mercy. And like Cedric, it is simply doing what it must to stay alive. The thought lingers for a moment before he silences it. Survival is a brutal thing, a cold, unyielding truth. It is not about what is right. It is about what is necessary. And so, with a steady hand, Cedric ends the life of the deer. As he prepares to carry the carcass back to the village, he feels the weight of his task settle on him. He is not just hunting for himself, but for the entire village, for the people who depend on him. There are no luxuries in this life, no easy comforts. The land gives little, and what it does give must be fought for, often at great cost. The return journey is slow, the weight of the deer dragging on him as he trudges through the snow. The cold has settled deep into his bones, the wind biting at his face. But he does not stop. There is no time to rest. There is no time for weakness. The villagers need food, and he is the one who must provide it. When he finally reaches the edge of the forest, he sees the village in the distance, the smoke rising from the chimneys, the faint sound of voices in the wind. It is home, but it is also a place of struggle, a place where death and hunger are constant companions. Cedric knows that the coming winter will be harder than ever. The plague is spreading across the kingdom, and people are dying in the streets. The crops have failed once more, and the game is growing scarce. It is only a matter of time before the village begins to wither away, just as the land has. As he enters the village, Cedric is met with the familiar faces of his neighbors. Tired, worn faces that speak of a life lived in perpetual hardship. The women are gathered around the well, their faces lined with the same exhaustion that marks Cedric's own. The men, once strong and capable, are bent with age and illness, their shoulders slumped under the weight of responsibility. Cedric pauses for a moment, looking around at the people of Stormhold. They are survivors, yes, but survival in this world is a constant struggle. It is a battle against the land, against the seasons, against death itself. And as Cedric walks through the village, he knows that the battle is far from over. But for today, they have food. For today, they survive. The fog hangs thick over the village of Blackthorn, weaving through the narrow streets like a veil of mourning. It is a fog that clings to everything, dampening the sounds of life, muting the colors of the world. The stone houses, worn and weathered by years of harsh winters, appear ghostly in the pale light of dawn, their outlines blurred, as if the village itself is struggling to remember its shape. The air is heavy with the scent of wet earth, the faintest trace of burning wood, and the musty odor of the bodies of those who are too sick to leave their homes. The world feels suffocated by the fog, as though the very land has forgotten how to breathe. Inside one of the cottages, a fire crackles weakly in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The low hum of conversation rises and falls as women prepare the morning meal, their movements slow, tired. In the corner, a cradle rocks gently, a quiet, rhythmic sound that seems to be the only life in the room. It is a sound that echoes the quiet, fragile pulse of existence in Blackthorn, life that stirs only in the shadows, hesitant, as though uncertain of how long it can endure. Sister Eliana, a healer of the village, watches over the hearth from a distance. Her fingers, though worn and calloused from years of labor, trembles slightly as she adjusts the pot hanging over the fire. The flame dances beneath it, its warmth offering a small comfort against the cold. But Aliana feels no warmth in her heart. She has seen too much. The plague is sweeping through the kingdom, and Blackthorn is no exception. It has claimed the lives of the young and the old, leaving families broken, villages desolate, and faith itself hanging by a thread. As the village's healer, Aliana is both a guardian and a witness. She tends to the sick, the afflicted, and the dying, all the while holding back the flood of grief that threatens to overwhelm her. She has seen it before. The pale, sweating faces of those stricken with fever, the rattling coughs that sound like the last breath of the dying, the vacant eyes of those who slip away into death long before their time. The plague is swift, ruthless. It does not care for age, status, or strength. It is an equalizer, reducing all to the same frailness in the end. Aliana has lost count of the number of bodies she has seen in the past few weeks alone. The plague has spread like wildfire, and there are no signs of it slowing. The villagers pray to the saints, offer sacrifices, light candles in the darkened churches, but none of it seems to make a difference. The sickness moves in the air, in the water, in the very soil beneath their feet. It is a force that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be defeated by prayer or by potion. Aliana has tried every remedy she knows, roots, herbs, poultices, but the sickness continues its march, and the people continue to fall. Today, however, there is no time for grief. There is no time to stop and mourn. The work must go on. As she finishes stirring the pot, Aliana is interrupted by the sound of a child crying. Her heart lurches in her chest. It is a sound she has heard too many times in the last days. The cries of children whose mothers have succumbed to plague, their tiny bodies left without protection, left without guidance. The crying is soft at first, but it grows louder, more frantic, as though it is calling for help that cannot come. Aliana moves quickly across the room, her feet sure even on the slippery floor. She bends down to lift the small child from the cradle, a girl no older than 3. The child is feverish, her skin flushed with heat, her eyes glassy. Her mother is dead, taken by the plague the night before, her body already cold in the corner of the cottage. Aliana's heart aches as she presses the child to her chest, feeling the soft, fragile weight of her. "Sure, little one," Aliana murmurs softly, though she knows there is little she can do. "It will be all right. I'll take care of you." But the truth is that she does not know if it will be all right. She does not know if this child will survive. She has seen so many children lost in the past weeks, their tiny forms too weak to fight the sickness, their cries lost in the wind.